This is the end.
So what's outrageous about all this is they know you're naive, but not just naive, gullible. You don't want to believe the government's growing the opium and the cocaine, the coca, and controlling who can ship it in. You don't want to believe n.korea has been caught in Halliburton running giant child kidnapping rings. Even when it comes out in the Houston Chronicle and the Chicago Tribune, nobody gets in trouble. You don't want to believe that the government funded the communist and Hitler before that, even though it's declassified in public. You don't want to believe that our government put the North Koreans in power and put Ho Chi Minh, who was admittedly OSS, in power and worked with the OSS during World War II. You don't want to admit it because it's so diabolical. But it's all on record. And now because of the information age, they go, okay, yeah, we put the commies in power. Yeah, we're growing opium. Yeah, we got CIA aircraft. We fly people out that are to be tortured when we fly cocaine in. And they have congressional hearings, you know, the CIA Solicitor General saying, we did bring all the coke in and we did do it, but we're sorry now. And so, of course, they're in the news saying they're getting ready to take more of your pension funds. Of course, they're going to come out and say, well, we want to put lithium in the water to make you behave yourself on Fox News. They're just going to come right out and say, you're not going to admit you're in a nightmare. See, once you buy into corruption and rationalize it by increments, pretty soon those increments add up to really big things you're accepting. Of course 9/11 is staged. Of course. I mean, what idiot looks at the facts and doesn't know it? Not just the evidence. Look at how within 15 minutes of the attack happening, this is a new world order, everything's changed, we've got to attack Iraq, we've got to take all your rights away, and blah, blah, blah. The same talking points everywhere. And then it goes on and on, how the U.S. troops were already massed to invade the month before. Bush had already signed the launch order. They announced Building 7 had fallen exactly how it did fall right before it fell. On and on and on. None of us are safe while this continues. You know how bold these people are? They could have killed Kennedy, who had health problems with poison in his drink. They could have killed any of these people. No, they wanted to blow his head off in plain view of hundreds of people and dozens of police, with everyone seeing the men behind the grassy knoll firing. They did that as a public execution at high noon to let you know we run things now. Look, at the end of World War II, 22,000, this is on record, so don't live in denial, 22,000 U.S. troops had been captured in German camps by the Russians. And the Russians just kept them as slave labor and intel. And our government didn't want to have a PR problem. They just said, keep them. 22,000 troops don't mean jack diddly squat. Now, if 22,000 troops don't mean jack diddly squat to the people that ran our government in 1945, who do you think's running things now? Because the way corruption works is it always gets worse till it's brought fully to heel. What do you think's going to happen, ladies and gentlemen? Do you think any of you are safe? See, that's the big mind trick. That's the big game. Is that people think they're safe by cowering and by going along with corruption. They think the safe path is not speaking up, not popping your head up above, the grass, just going along to get along. When you have a nation of castrated, gelded, dumb men, because they're more than just cowards, they're dumb. Because only a fool thinks you give into corruption and you somehow get ahead. No, you become a slave. And your children become a slave. And you lose your hopes and your dreams and your future. And I've said this many times, I'll say it again. You're only alive once, folks. Now is only now. And the crossroads we're at. Going into the future, you're not going to be able to make the right decision later. You're not going to be able to turn back and wish that when the Republic was on its knees, but still had a fighting chance of getting on its feet. If we can just get the country on its feet, and right now it's trying to get up. The sleeping giant's awake, And it hadn't walked in decades, and it's trying to get up, trying to get out there in therapy and take a few steps. And every one of us have to give our blood, our sweat, our tears, our soul, our spirit, our very energy. And by give your soul to it, commit to liberty and freedom. Give your soul to God. If you give your soul to God, you're not going to be able to control yourself. All you out there that think you're Christian or think you're on the side of the light, look, if you're not fighting evil, come on. Faith without works is dead. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm not afraid of being destroyed. I'm not afraid of being demonized. I'm not afraid of being tortured. I'm not afraid of them making stuff up about me in the media, coming out and saying, Lord knows what. I'm only afraid of failing. That's why a lot of days I hate myself, because I'll be watching a previous show and I'll think, I should have explained that better, or I said that date wrong. Whatever. It doesn't matter. We can't get caught up in the fact that we're not perfect and we don't have all the answers. We know the globalists are consciously against free humanity and must be dealt with. And you notice that everything's quickening. Everything's getting more accelerated. Everything's getting more intense by the millisecond. And that's because everything is starting to come to a head right now. Just like before World War I and World War II, which we now know were orchestrated by the British Empire. And the modern British Empire is the Anglo-American New World Order / Israeli power arm. It's all merged, one big group. You can't say which head of the Hydra runs the Hydra, because it's all part of the same creature. One head of the Hydra is just as guilty as the other head of the Hydra. And the Hydra will destroy people who aren't good. It'll destroy people who are good. The point is, it's the big Hydra. It's the big dragon. It's the big monster. But it'll saddle up beside some other petty tyranny and say, look, I'm better than that tyranny. Join me, the dragon. That's its trick. To the point of, it created the Nazis. It created the Soviets. It created all of these enemies so it could menace you with those enemies, so it could have its war. I mean, it goes back to the Rothschilds and others funding both sides of any war. That way they always win. And then it's elementary to understand that Kim Jong-il is a pea in a pod with the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and the Dutch royalty and the British royalty and these elites. He wears a jumpsuit. He's got cameras watching people. He's got slave camps. He's what the globalists want. They let men and women together one day a year to breed. They take the babies away the way you take eggs away from a chicken. There's no such thing as family there. They are the model. And that's why our government gave them weapon systems, and that's why our government gave them nukes. And because they like them. The globalists don't like Iran. They're pro-family, and they got their own problems. But they're pro-family, they're pro-sovereignty, they're pro-free market, and they hate the New World Order, folks. You know, you don't have people taking people's kids and raising them in government brainwashing camps. They got their own form of tribal brainwashing, but everybody does. I mean, the issue is, we know why they're going up against Iran, okay? Because once they've got that country, they've got from Turkey all the way to Pakistan, they've got that whole area controlled to continue their operations. And so now, notice as the world goes into financial collapse, as we go into this crisis, and the government starts demonizing domestic groups ahead of staged terror attacks here to be blamed on us, simultaneously North Korea launches torpedo attacks on ships in international waters, starts threatening to attack the South. That forces the South Korean government that had been talking about making U.S. forces go home suddenly have to talk about war. They never had a peace treaty. There's just been a ceasefire for 50-plus years. And we are now right up to the point of open World War III starting with Iran, with North Korea, with Pakistan, who has nukes, and you look at all three cases, Pakistan given nukes by the West, North Korea given nukes by the West, Iran not given nukes by the West. Nowhere near to getting a nuke. They're being picked off because they don't have nukes and because they have not been chosen to menace their neighbors. Because Iran hasn't made a deal with the globalist. And if you go back and really study the history, not only did the Persians, under Mohammad Mossadegh, who was secular, kick out the Muslim extremists the British and CIA had brought in,